You know the sound, the distinct, metallic click of a deadbolt sliding into place, followed by the heavy, satisfying thud of the doorframe absorbing the vibration. For most, this is merely a security measure against the intrusion of the physical world. But for you, in the quiet, suffocating solitude of your room, it is something else entirely. It is a ritual. It is the boundary between the person you have to pretend to be and the hollow shell you actually are. You think you are protecting yourself, building a fortress out of drywall and paint, but have you ever stopped to wonder if you are actually building a cage? You keep the notifications silenced, the curtains drawn, and the world at a safe, unfeeling distance, convinced that if you cannot see them, they cannot reach you. But the silence you cultivate isn't peaceful. It is loud. It is the sound of your own heartbeat hammering against the ribs of a person who has forgotten how to be anything other than a spectator to their own life. You think you are safe because you are alone, but you are only accelerating the erosion of the one person you were meant to know best, yourself. The light in the room is always a precise, filtered shade of dim. You prefer it that way. In the stark, unforgiving light of day, you see too much, the dust motes dancing in the air, the unwashed coffee mug on the side table, the reflection of a stranger in the darkened television screen. You spend hours sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the locked door, feeling the weight of the silence pressing against your eardrums. It is a heavy, velvet-textured sensation that coats your lungs. You tell yourself it is for the best. You tell yourself that the noise outside, the demands of friends, the expectations of your career, the endless, rhythmic hum of social obligations, is a storm you simply aren't equipped to weather right now. You are saving your energy, you rationalize. You are reclaiming your sovereignty. But the truth is, the internal chaos is far more destructive than anything the outside world could ever throw at you. Inside, the thoughts move like quicksilver, erratic and impossible to capture. You replay conversations from 3 years ago, dissecting your own failures with a surgeon's cold, merciless precision. You analyze the way you smiled, the way you hesitated, the way you allowed yourself to be seen, and you judge yourself for every ounce of vulnerability. It is a relentless cycle of self-flagellation that you orchestrate entirely on your own. You have become a connoisseur of your own misery. You watch the clock tick by, each second a discrete unit of isolation, and you find a strange, perverse comfort in knowing that no one can interrupt your descent. You are the architect of your own abandonment. When the phone lights up on the floor, you watch it with the detached curiosity one might reserve for an insect trapped in a jar. You don't pick it up. You don't even need to read the message to know what it says. Someone is checking in. Someone is trying to bridge the gap. And the very idea of that bridge feels like a threat. You fear the intrusion of their kindness because their kindness implies that you are expected to respond, to engage, to be present. And to be present is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to admit that the locked door is not a choice, but a desperate, panicked necessity. You are afraid that if you open the door, if you let the light in, the person you are, or the person you have become in the darkness, will be found lacking. So you stay, tucked away in the corner, nursing the sharp, jagged edges of your own overthinking. You trace the cracks in the ceiling, weaving complex narratives about how you ended up here, locked away, choosing the cold embrace of solitude over the unpredictable warmth of human connection. It is a self-imposed exile, refined over months, perhaps years, until the act of being alone feels like your only true identity. There is a rhythm to this isolation, a slow, hypnotic cadence that lulls you into a state of semi-consciousness. You stop eating when you're hungry and stop sleeping when you're tired. You exist in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a signal that never comes, for an epiphany that refuses to manifest. You try to write, or draw, or read, but the words blur on the page. The books are just ink on paper, and the thoughts you try to articulate are just echoes of your own emptiness. You realize, with a sudden, sharp pang of clarity, that the piece you thought you were crafting is merely a void. You have successfully cut off the world, but in doing so, you have also cut off the oxygen to your own spirit. You are preserved here, in this room, like an artifact in a vacuum, safe from harm but also devoid of life. The internal dialogue grows louder, a cacophony of what-ifs and should-haves that fill the space where conversation with others should be. You are exhausting yourself with the effort of holding the door shut. Your hands are cramping, your shoulders are tight, and your soul is brittle, ready to shatter at the slightest gust of wind. You think you are protecting yourself from the world, but you are just guarding a prison cell, and the only prisoner is the person you were before the fear took root. You are realizing that you have become the very thing you feared most, an entity defined solely by its absence. As the shadows lengthen and the room deepens into a bruised, indigo twilight, the realization hits you with the weight of a stone dropped in a well. The door is locked, yes, but the key has long since been lost, not by someone else, but by your own neglect. You have been waiting for someone to knock, for someone to force their way in and remind you that you exist, yet you have spent every ounce of your energy ensuring that they can't. The irony is as bitter as bile. You have constructed a sanctuary of silence, but you are the only occupant, and you are starving to death in the middle of it. You are terrified of being seen, yet you are terrified of being invisible. You want the world to vanish, yet you feel the sting of its indifference. The truth, the unspoken and terrifying truth, is that the safety you crave is a delusion. There is no safety in stagnation. There is no protection in deletion. You are simply fading, bit by bit, becoming a ghost in your own home, haunting the spaces where you once lived with purpose. You realize now that the lock on the door wasn't meant to keep others out. It was a desperate, failed attempt to keep the chaos of your own mind from leaking out into the world. You are not protecting yourself, you are hiding, and the person you are hiding from is yourself. The door is locked to keep the world away. But the silence only traps me inside.